Hello everybody, and welcome to another Flaming Dice Reviews video. My name is Matt, and today we're going to be taking a look at a cooperative game by Minion Games called Dead Men Tell No Tales. Now, in Dead Men Tell No Tales, players are attempting to loot a burning and sinking pirate ship called the Skeleton's Revenge. Along the way, they're fighting the cursed members of this pirate ship, and they're trying to gather the loot. At the same time, they're fighting fires and trying to escape. So we're going to take a look at how this game plays, take a look at the contents, and then I'll meet you back here for my final thoughts. I'll see you then. So as always, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the components that come inside of Dead Men Tell No Tales. Obviously, you have a rule book, which is clear and concise and easy to understand. It does have a lot of information, but it's not a hard read at all. You have your bag with your enemy tokens, and these can have skeleton crew or guards that have treasure, which is the objective of the game, or beneficial items. You have your action tokens, which the players use to keep track of the certain number of actions they have on their turn. Now, it is important to note that these shell cases do not come with the game. We simply put the store copy in that for ease of setup and transport. It also comes with some wonderful dice, which are used to track the fire level in the rooms. Deckhands, which are wonderful little wooden enemies that spawn. They're very easy to kill, but they can multiply quickly and overrun the players. Now, this is a fatigue tracker. And this is one of the most unique things about the game, is that each player has one of these trackers and they track their fatigue level on it. And this not only can kill the player, but it also can limit which level or which rooms they can enter by the fire levels of those rooms and where their dial is on this tracker. You have your pirate characters, your pirate meeples, if you will, that the players use to move around the board. Player tokens, which can be, or which are placed down here on the battle tracker. You have different assortment, or an assortment of cards that have various purposes. You have room tiles, which are placed as the ship, the Skeleton's Revenge, is explored. And then you have your starting tile. It's a large tile, and the other rooms are placed off of this. So next, let's take a look at gameplay. So now let's talk about how you play Dead Men Tell No Tales. And this is the starting setup. You can see here that we have 3 dice representing the fire levels of these rooms. Here you have a yellow icon on the board, which denotes that at the beginning of the game you need to roll a dice, as it has a question mark. And that's the fire level of that room. We have a 4. So we have 2 fire level 4s, 1 fire level 2, and 1 fire level 3. Now, it's important to remember that rooms explode and can cause chain reactions whenever they reach a 6. So it's very important to manage these fires, or these fire levels. Now, on a player's turn, they first draw a room tile. Now, on your first turn, you draw 2 room tiles. So that's what I'm going to show here. And I'm actually going to not show the player interaction with the ship yet. So I'm just going to show a little bit of how the ship grows and how you explore it to begin with, and we'll look at actual gameplay in the next segment. So I've drawn this tile, and whenever you're placing these rooms, all of the doors have to match up with other doors. For example, you can't put a wall, which doesn't have a doorway, against a doorway, and that's very important for the gameplay. Now, in this example, I've drawn a tile which has a 2 on it, so that room is going to start at fire level 2. Now, I've also drawn this room that has a fire level 4, a red 4 on it, and I have to place this room as well. So I'm going to place this here, and I'm going to put a fire level 4 there. Now, another thing you have to do whenever you draw tiles and explore the ship is you have to draw tokens out of the bag and place them on the board. Now, for this room, I've drawn a trap door, which is going to spawn a deckhand. And deckhands are weak little enemies that you can kill with an action on your turn. However, they can multiply quickly, and if you ever get to a point where you have to draw a deckhand and can't, you automatically lose the game. So it's very important to manage those along with the fire level. Now for this room, I've also drawn a skeleton crew, and the skeleton crew are various strengths, and they are sometimes 5, sometimes 4 and 3. I believe there's 5. I know there's at least 3 and 4 level skeleton crews, and they have treasure on the back of them, treasure that will help the players during the course of the game. So you want to get rid of them, not only because they give you beneficial items, but because they can chase you around and can block your path of escape. Now at this point, we've searched the ship. Now we would take our turns, move around the ship, manipulate the fire levels of the room. Like I said, we're going to skip that for now. Finally, you draw a card during the Skelet's Revenge phase. And Skelet's Revenge is the name of the ship. And whenever you draw these cards, there's basically 2 parts to each card. There's a fire level, and then there is a action down here at the bottom. So in this example, I've drawn a red and yellow 2. And whenever you draw that, each die on the board that matches both the number and the color of this card are going to increase. So this one's going to go to a fire level 3, and this one is also going to go from a fire level 2 to a fire level 3. Now down at the bottom, there's also a picture of the skeleton crew. And just for the purposes of this example, let's say that the player was there. The skeleton crew is going to move towards a player. And exploration continues in this way by players exploring the ship and placing rooms in the correct locations. And at the end of their turn, they draw a Skelet's Revenge card. Now, you may notice something different about this tile, and it's got this little powder keg down here with a number on it. So these rooms are especially dangerous because this one, for example, will have a explosion if this fire level ever reaches 4. Now, the powder keg explosion, as they're called, isn't as dangerous as a room explosion. And again, a room explosion is when one of these dice gets to a 6, but they do add up. Also, they're going to count towards the allotted number of explosions that the players can get on the ship before they lose the game. So next, let's actually take a look at how players interact with the board and take their turns. Alright, now let's take a look at an example turn in Dead Men Tell No Tales. So for the purposes of this video, I put everything kind of close, but where I have my stick here is where the line between the playing area and the player board or player area is. So this is the game board and this is a player area, and I just have it close up so that we can see what's going on. Now, in the component section, I mentioned the fatigue tracker, and that's a very important component of this game. So we're going to show a good many examples of how that interacts with a player. Now, it's important to note that players on their turn have access to several actions, and those are walking, which is moving around the ship, running, which is moving faster, but there are fatigue penalties to running, lower fire, which you can roll back the dice to kind of manage the fire on the ship, eliminate deckhand, which are killing these little guys, pick up tokens, and tokens, for example, this cutlass that my character Jade has gotten in a fictitious earlier round, then they can be used to help you out in your search for treasure. You can rest, which will lower your fatigue level by 2. You can increase your battle strength by 1, like so. And you can swap item cards, because each player at all times has an item, and they give you different benefits or give your player different bonuses as you take your turn. So in my case, I have Jade. This is the beginning of her turn, and she draws her tile, which is a red 2 dial, places it in the player area, and puts the appropriate die on top of that room. So now that's another room that has a fire level 2. Now she draws a card, or correction, a token, and places it on that room as well. Now in this example, we've drawn a guard. Now guards, on their flip side, have treasures. And treasure is how you win the game. And depending on the difficulty of the game that you're playing, the more or less treasure tokens you'll have to remove from the ship in order to win. But for now, that guard is intact and guarding his treasure. And we're going to ignore it for the purposes of this gameplay example. Now here's Jade on the board, and she has 5 actions to do. Now the first thing that she wants to do is attack a deckhand. We don't want them to get out of control. So you can attack a deckhand either in the same room as you or in an adjacent room. So she is going to spend one of her actions to kill this deckhand, and he's gone. Now Jade has a special ability that whenever she takes the kill deckhand action on her turn, she can kill 2 deckhands. However, in this turn, only one was adjacent, so she just did 1. Now, her compass card gives her the ability to take 1 free move or run action per turn. She's just going to walk. She's going to walk into this room. Now, this is very important. The fire level in the room she left was 3. The fire level in the room she went to is 4. So her fatigue goes up the difference of that fire level. So she was at a fatigue of 3, and now she's at a fatigue of 4. If fatigue ever reaches this skull and crossbones symbol on the fatigue tracker, surprise, surprise, Jade dies. Now, if the character dies, they're not out of the game. They simply draw a new character card and place a new pirate meeple on the board, and then continue gameplay. So that's one really cool aspect of Dead Men Tell No Tales, one of many. So she's in this room, and since we mentioned that rooms could explode at fire level 6, she wants to lower that. So she is going to spend another action and take that fire level from 4 down to 3. For her third action, she's going to eliminate deckhands again. And if you'll recall, her ability was that she could kill 2 as 1 action. So she kills these 2 deckhands and helps the party out in that way. Now she's going to take a fourth action and move into this room. Now again, she went from a fire level 3 to a fire level 4, so she's going to take another fatigue. Now something important just happened. Because her fatigue reached a level 5, she can no longer go into fire level 5 rooms. So that's very important for the strategic planning of moving around this ship and trying to gather the treasure. For her 5th and final action, she doesn't want to go in there and fight that guy yet, so she is going to end her turn by fighting the fire level in this room. Next, we're going to take a look at what would happen if she did want to battle that guy. Now, at the end of the last section, we ended the turn a little prematurely. We forgot to do the Skeleton's Revenge portion of the turn. So it did, well, let's just say that we drew a card, we adjusted the fire levels of the different rooms, and it just so happened that we drew a red 3. So since Jade was in a room that had a red 3, that die was turned up to a 4, which gave Jade an additional fatigue. Now it's Jade's turn. She's ready and raring to go. One of the things that she wants to do on her turn is trade out an item. So she had a compass. Now she's trading it out for a sword, which adds +1 to strength in battle. So Jade is essentially more powerful. She's ready to go over there and kick that skeleton crew's butt. So another thing she does on her turn before she goes over is she wants to keep the fire under control, so she lowers that one to a 3. Now she has a free action on her turn, or correction, she used to with the compass. She doesn't anymore because she traded it out for a sword. So she's going to spend her third action to move into this room with the skeleton crew. Now the cool thing about battles is that it doesn't take an action to fight. She moved into the room with the skeleton crew. It also works if the skeleton crew moves into a room with her, but the battle happens automatically. So now we have to compare the battle level of Jade to the combat strength of this guard, or correction, this skeleton crew. Now you may notice in the last video it was a 3. Well, that wasn't as dramatic, so I upgraded that skeleton crew to a 4. Now Jade essentially with her sword item card, which I don't know if you've had a chance to see that yet, but with her sword item card and her cutlass that she found, she is essentially a combat level 2. So in order to win the battle, she has to roll and beat a 4 with those combined battle strength, and die roll. So we roll the die and we get a 3. It's also important to note that this is not the die that came with the game. Trudy, the owner of the game, thought this die was a little prettier, so she substituted it. So here we have a 3 plus 1 from the battle tracker due to the cutlass, and 1 due to the sword, so Jade has a 5. She successfully kills the skeleton crew, and he reveals what he was carrying. He was carrying another cutlass. So Jade is going to continue her turn, flip over another token to show this action, and pick up this cutlass. Now Jade is even more powerful, and she's gone up on the battle track again. For her 5th and final action, she's just going to rest to make sure that she doesn't succumb to the fire, and she's going to lower her fatigue by 2. Then she draws a Skeleton's Revenge card and affects the board and play passes to the next player. Now the last thing we're going to talk about are the explosions themselves and how the fire level can get out of control very quickly. Now I've just thrown this together as a quick example, and we're going to say that it's the end of a player's turn. Now during the Skeleton's Revenge phase, they draw this card. Now this card has a yellow 5 on it, so only rooms that have a yellow 5 are going to be affected. Unfortunately for the players, this room has a yellow 5. So it's going to go up to a 6. Now if you remember, we talked about rooms exploding when they reached fire level 6. So we're going to have to put an explosion on the fire tracker. And again, if we get too many explosions, we're going to lose the game. Another thing about room explosions is how they spread. So for example, this room over here, out this door, is going to go from a fire level 3 up to a fire level 4. The room to the top of it is going to go from a 4 up to a 5. And then this room is going to go from a 3 up to a 4. Not so bad, right? We didn't get any other 6s. Well, hold on just a second. If you recall earlier, we talked about these special rooms with these powder kegs. And once the die matches the powder keg on this room, the powder keg also explodes. Now, unlike room explosions, powder kegs only go in one direction. So this room is going to explode this way, raising the fire level up to a 4. You move the die to cover that to show that it's already exploded, because the room can't explode twice. Speaking of that, this room is now impassable. So it makes the game that much more difficult for players, because if this room held the treasure that they needed to get to, and again, treasure is the objective of the game, they would have to find another way to get to it. So as you can see, the explosions, we were at no explosions and we went up to 2. We're only allowed 6 during the course of the game. And our path to treasure just potentially got more difficult. Welcome back, everybody. Now that we've seen inside the box, let's talk about my final thoughts on Dead Men Tell No Tales. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this game, but then I'm a big fan of cooperative games. I love the dice mechanic that tracks the fire level inside of each individual room. I love the room placement. I'm a big fan of tile laying games as well. So this game was very much catered, it feels like it was catered to me. The ship itself is very, very hard to traverse due to the fire levels, which again, that's a very unique mechanic. And even more unique than that is the entire theme of fighting fires while you're trying to loot a pirate ship. You could have given me a million years to design this game and I would have focused on the combat, and I never would have thought of adding in a fire level to the rooms and for that to be one of the primary dangers. Again, hats off to the designers. That was just such a wonderful, wonderful feature and made for a very unique gameplay experience. Now, even though the game is very unique and stands on its own, the game does remind me a lot of Pandemic. Because of the rooms being able to explode and chain react and cause other explosions, it felt very much like Pandemic to me. In Pandemic, you have the epidemic cards, which can cause outbreaks and cause cubes to go all over the board, and once you run out of cubes or can't place a cube, the game ends. Well, Dead Men Tell No Tales, with the room explosions, has that same chain reaction feel where you have to really monitor areas and go, well, this area of the ship is ripe for explosion. We need to fight those fires because we're not going to be able to gather the treasures in time before that explodes. Because much like Pandemic and the Outbreak tracker, there's also an explosion tracker in Dead Men Tell No Tales. That's one of the biggest similarities I saw, is that there's so many ways to lose Dead Men Tell No Tales and only one way to win, just like Pandemic. Now, even though I'm comparing it to Pandemic a lot, that doesn't mean that the game doesn't stand on its own, because it very much does. The dice that are used to track the fires is very unique. I love all of the different types of cursed crew members that you can fight. The deckhands and the guards and the skeleton crew, and they all react a little bit differently. They all have different rules for fighting them. I like the battle tracker. I just really enjoy Dead Men Tell No Tales. And if you enjoy cooperative games and like games that have just cause such a high stress level while you're playing and make you think several turns out, then Dead Men Tell No Tales would probably interest you very much. I highly recommend it. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and visit us at the website at www.flamingdicereviews.com, also at facebook.com/FlamingDiceReviews, and you can always follow us on Twitter at FlamingDiceRev. That's Flaming Dice REV. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.